Thank you, everyone. I think we have been given one of the most difficult slot for two reasons. One, the bar was set high in the previous fireside chat and the keynote. And secondly, we might be the ones keeping you away from your tea and cakes. So please be polite to us and please give us your full attention. And I would like to thank everyone on the stage today for finding time from their calendars for this discussion. And I hope we serve you an insightful discussion today. And as Minister Sir noted, this event is happening at a very good time. He had his own reasons to say so, but for us, we just came out of MWC 2025. So this is right on the heels of MWC 2025, and because our panel discussion is on policy and regulatory matters, so some of the key policy matters that emerged at MWC are attracting network investment, the famous 5G monetization and unlocking 5G opportunities, and then having an responsible and ethical AI, covering the usage gap, and obviously having a globally converged regulatory framework. So we will try to touch upon some of the topics from this, and we will hear from our panel members as to what their views are regarding this topic as to when policy and regulatory matters are concerned. So with that, I think I'll start with the very first topic, the famous one, unlocking opportunities with 5G. And maybe I would like to open that with a data point that we have at GSMA Intelligence. We have a product called 5G Connectivity Index, and we have mapped 39 countries in that, and India ranks 32 out of those 39 countries. Now here, higher the number is not good, here the lower the number is good. And that index is prepared based on 6 indicators, out of which India has scored fairly well on network infrastructure and services. So congratulations to all our telecom operators for the fastest 5G rollout and to our consumers for adoption. But India scored low on some of the areas like spectrum portfolios and all those things. So coming to you, Singhal sir, maybe I would like to open this panel with you. Um, with India at an average of mid-band spectrum, which is between 7 to 800 of megahertz spectrum portfolio with telecom operators, and we all know that it is kind of the key band to unlock 5G opportunities. So would you please share your thoughts on, is there a spectrum roadmap in place going up to 2030 and longer to unlock additional spectrum resources for telcos?
Thank you, Radka, and thank you, ET, for inviting me. Uh, Before I come to answer your question, I just want to update the audience, which many of you may know, that in terms of the 5G actual connectivity to the consumers, India ranks second in the world. So it is for our operators who have played a key role in rolling out the networks in tandem with the government policies which government has notified from time to time, and that has achieved this feat. Now, as far as the spectrum is concerned, uh, in since 2021 we have stated policy that every financial year we will come out with the auction program of spectrum, where sufficient quantum of spectrum is always made available to the industry participants, and we have observed that normally the spectrum availability is more than the demand on the ground. In addition to the mid-band spectrum, we are already working on. We have now also started working on high-end millimeter wave bands, including terahertz spectrum bands in India. So I don't see any shortage of spectrum in times to come for operators in the country. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I think we would now like to hear from telecom operators. I'm sure they will have a little bit of differing view on it. So we'll go in the order, but I see that ET has kindly cut down our time by 15 minutes. So maybe conscious of time, if, Rahul, Ambika, and Mr. Tiwari, you all can take around a minute each to add your thoughts on the same question as to what strategies do you believe that we should adopt to unlock those additional spectrum resources?
Yeah, thank you, Radhika, and thank you, Economic Times, for this invite. So first, let me start by saying that a lot has happened on spectrum. From a period where you could not predict what lied in front of you, you have a lot of clarity in terms of what is going to be available. And we are in a situation of spectrum abundance, as Mr. Sangal said, from a period of spectrum scarcity in the past. I think what now needs to be done is where are we headed for future? And since morning we have been having large discussion on AI, we've been large discussion on the use cases and billions of devices which are in store for us. There is a report which came last year, around 2000, I think it's a GSMA report by the way, says 2000 megahertz of spectrum will be required by 2030 going ahead. That's like 2 gigahertz of spectrum. Right now, only 400 is available. So if we are going to stick with the explosion which we are talking about, there is going to be humongous need of spectrum going ahead. There are also reports talking about 30 billion IoT devices, which will also require spectrum. So that is one concern, that there is going to be need. Second point I want to register is, are we having efficient discussions in place to ensure that we use the spectrum efficiently? There is a large debate which happened in US on delicensing spectrum, for example, and some recent reports have surfaced in US now, which chose to give large chunk of Wi-Fi 7, for example, to unlicensed. The recent report says that the performance drops dramatically within 10 feet, of the Wi-Fi spectrum. So you gave away large amount of spectrum, but the efficiency of spectrum is completely unutilized. It's very inefficient. There are good models. Japan has a very good model of how to use spectrum, for example. So that's the other thing to be kept in mind, that A, usage, B, are we doing it efficiently? Three, I want to very short, is that what more strategies can the government adopt maybe to make it more efficient? I think one of the things which can be done is to really allow a better use of spectrum by either allowing me to surrender spectrum when I can, or maybe you'll allow swapping, for example. Now, what is surrender? Surrender is I have already paid for spectrum. And if I now want to think that I could have used 1800 better or 2100 better, I surrender that spectrum. If I've paid that money to you for next few years, naturally you either refund to me or adjust me against future spectrum dues. So that's one portion of surrender. The other thing which can be done, and is being done in some countries, is the concept of spectrum swapping, where if I find out that my usage is 2100 is not so efficient, then you allow me to give it back to the government, and the prorated value of the spectrum which has been left is allowed to be utilized for some other spectrum which I may be given on market price or through auction. So there is an adjustment which is allowed purely for the reason of having efficient usage of spectrum. So these are some of the strategies which the government can do. A lot has happened now, but I think we have to look ahead. There's a large amount of data explosion in the future. We're talking about 5400 or 54,000 exabytes of data in future, right? So we really have to start now.
Thank you, Rahul. Ambika, if you can add your thoughts to it.
Sure. Thanks, Radhika. Thank you, Economic Times. And thanks, Rahul, for covering so many critical points. I'll just add one or two pieces. There's been a lot of discussion in the past couple of quarters about allocation of 6 gigahertz, right? And that's not a new topic. That's been long discussed. I think allocating that for 5G and 6G will make a lot of difference. We've seen precedents in other countries, and that would really help open up things for us. And just to add to the GSMA point, Radhika, that you shared, the GSMA report actually guides about 2 gigahertz as an average for any country. We are talking about the fastest growing economy in the world and the largest demography that we are in, right? Definitely the needs are more. And once we make a roadmap, like Single Sir was mentioning, for the next 5 years or 10 years, we definitely need to be cognizant that it's not just 2 gigahertz, it could be way more. So having that collaborative dialogue between the government and the industry and other advisors and think tanks looking at global practices would really be the way ahead to ensure that we don't have the scarcity we are talking about.
Thank you, Ambika.
Yeah, I will just quickly summarize actually what my colleague has already emphasized. See, in India, we are having in 3.5 gigahertz band, only 400 megahertz capability, which is already given to the telcos very few much is left only. Up to 3600 is already allocated. So in this 3.5 gigahertz band, something more could be given from as a roadmap from the government, I will urge. And government is proactively working actually. Upper 6 gigahertz, as we all in the telco fraternity, we know that upper 6 gigahertz government is actively considering. We will urge that, these are IMT bands. IMT is definitely going to contribute to the digital economy of the country. It has already shaped actually 5 trillion economy. And this golden band, apart from upper 6 gigahertz, which is called golden band up to 8.4 megahertz, 8.4 gigahertz, right from 7.125 to 8.4 gigahertz. That is very, very important because it is contiguous band, and having the contiguous spectrum given to the telcos, the capability spectrum utilization will be much better. So that should be there. And I will also urge that lower 6 gigahertz band should also be, government should consider for the IMT. In some countries, it has been identified for the IMT. WRC has to yet to, harmonize all these things. Let us see what outcomes comes. Another, as a just advice, or our ask from the telcos to the government will be that we should not encourage much of the de-licensing, because there is from here and there will be always ask that some of the band, some of the chunk, which is precious band, mid band is very precious. 6G, 5G beyond, and 6G all will depend mainly on the mid band. So de-licensing should be, unless it is very much desired, it should be ruled out. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I think, Vibha, I would like a minute from you as well. As an OEM, you work with global customers. So what is your experience in terms of, different spectrum portfolios with different customer, and how it affects their overall performance and all those things?
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for this great event and this program. I kind of echo with my friends from the telecom operator fraternity that India has done very, very well in terms of getting the right spectrum allocated to get 5G ramp up happen the way it happened. I think there's no second thoughts on that. We did a good job there. And if you look at some of the global examples, I think we've possibly done better than that, at least to begin with. I think what's important now, on how do we take it forward. Right now, we have almost 270 active subscribers on 5G. We're looking at this number going to almost 770 by 2028. This additional spectrum, which has to happen within the next 3 years. And it has to happen in one block, so that all of us, including the OEMs as well as operators, can plan the expansion basis that. I would say that is one of the critical pieces I would want to comment on.
Thank you, Vibha. I think we heard some interesting comments, and for you, Single Sir, I think Ambika very politely ticked up the demand from even 2 gigahertz, so maybe one to consider. With that, maybe we will move on to the next topic, which was, which was the call from the industry at the very famous ministerial program at MWC, which is the need for globally harmonized regulatory framework. We all know that because of the geopolitical tensions globally, countries and regions are opting for country-specific and region-specific governance, which obviously is not benefiting our industry and which is a kind of hindrance to the development of overall industry and ecosystem. So there was a call for having a globally harmonized regulatory framework at MWC. And maybe Vibha, for this one, I'll come back to you. Nokia, again, my same point that, as a vendor, you work with so many global customers. So what are your thoughts on having a globally harmonized regulatory framework, and how does it impact you as a vendor?
Okay, great question for me, I must say. This gives me opportunity to bring some of the critical things which we face day in, day out. Now I think we need to understand how a typical telecom product is created or developed. it goes through a very comprehensive standardization process which is followed globally. And there are bodies like 3GPP, ITUs, which have created fairly harmonized approach across the globe, across countries, to make sure when a product is created, it can be used across the globe by any operator, any country, any regulations. Now, when the product is so harmonized, ideally the usage of that product as well as the way it's governed or it's monitored should also be harmonized. This is where I feel, and this is not just us as the country, across the globe we've seen different countries adopting different mechanisms to evaluate which product is ready to be put in the network or not. The security certification process is something which definitely is not harmonized. And how does it impact a company or a manufacturer who's producing for a mass deployment across multiple customers? That means I will need to put that product through different kind of certification programs depending on where we are selling. Now, US has one of the possibly oldest, approach to this, where they did the security as a voluntary program managed through a NIST as an institute, which created a little bit of governing rules on how the security should be looked upon. EU came out with a different approach 2016, where they said, you know what, there is a different way you do security. They started off by saying that this is not a mandatory, this is good to have. But 2024, looking at the whole geopolitics change which is happening, they come out with an updated version, which is called NIS2, which is where they're saying, okay, it's mandatory now, every product that you deploy in EU, and now EU, all member states have the same process, needs to go through a specific certification program. In India, we've also taken a process which is called MTCTE, where the compliance has to go through a fairly rigorous process and a testing within the country. Australia is doing something, Vietnam is doing something. I think as a OEM or a technology creator, our request will be there has to be a little bit of a recognition of what's happening across countries. This can be a topic of discussion at a broader level. It can't be solved sitting in one country, but a harmonious approach to this is definitely needed, and that's one request we'll put to DoT. Where we'll need government support to make sure that whatever we are creating here, exporting also, but deploying here or anywhere else has a seamless approach.
Thank you, Vibha. Sir, maybe I'll come to you again. As government, how do you see the government navigating this landscape of fragmented approach versus harmonized approach? And do you have any insights to share on, what Indian government is favoring, a region-specific approach versus a globally harmonized approach?
Thank you. And this is a very uh, difficult area to travel, in the sense that uh, the security requirements varies from country to country and region to region. So I agree that as a department, as a government, we are in favor of a globalized regulatory framework, but simultaneously it has to be adapted to meet the localized requirements also. So we follow that path, where uh, we have come out recently with the new law which emphasizes on rule-based working and harmonizing the Indian regulatory framework with the global standards, global regulatory framework. But simultaneously, we need to take care of the security concerns in the region where we are working upon. So that way we have come out with a very balanced framework already, and we are in the process of coming out with few additional rules. And whatever we are bringing out, it is in consultation with all the stakeholders. So I hope that should give a sufficient comfort level to every stakeholder in the sector, that we are in the process of finalizing the regulatory framework which considers inputs of each and every stakeholder. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I think so. Vibha, globally harmonized framework versus our a balanced approach. Anyone from the telecom sector, Rahul, Ambika, Mr. Tiwari, would like to add very quick points before I jump on to the next topic.
So I just want to say two important things. I think the first point is that uh, we have to be creating frameworks and standards which keep us alive for a global race. We do not want to create islands where we create a standard or a framework which is not universal. And the way to exert leadership in this space is to create something which is actually globally aligned. I think that has to be the driving motor, because we have ambitions as a country now. We do want to move ahead, but we don't want to create islands, right? We really want to create something which people are going to say, yes, this is what alignment looks like. So I think that is what we should really focus on.
Thank you, Rahul. And conscious of time, I will definitely touch upon my next topic, which is again very important for our country. Before I move on to the closing remarks, so I'm not sure how many of you understand the term usage gap, because this is a very GSMA specific term. But usage gap is primarily people who are either not connected to the internet services, mobile internet services, which is 3G and above, or people who are living under the coverage. Basically, they have access to 3G services, but they are 3G, 4G, 5G, but not using it. And India has a huge population in the usage gap. I won't quote the exact numbers, they are always contradictory, but I can say roughly 50% of our mobile adult population is under the usage gap. And the common reasons that have been cited from the Indian population in a survey are lack of affordable handset, because India is a very price sensitive country, lack of awareness and lack of skill set, especially when it comes to the rural segment of the country. And very interesting data point that by the end of 2023, the smartphone penetration with women was at 37% of the population versus men at 53. So maybe Ambika, I would like you to spend a minute or two, please minute or two maximum. As a woman in tech, how do you see the telecom operator or the industry as an overall navigating this situation where one, lack of affordable handsets and awareness is the problem, and then women are lagging further in this?
Thank you, Radhika. I think, and I've gone through some of these numbers and they do seem really depressing. And they also show us the roadmap ahead of what all needs to be done, which is quite a lot. So just double clicking on the gender piece, I think a couple of factors. One is, of course, in terms of affordability. The ownership of phones, and especially of smartphones, is very low. It's almost at 45 to 50% of what men have in India. And some of the schemes, which of course the government also launched, there was a scheme named PM smartphone scheme. There are other schemes that other telcos also come out with in terms of having free or more access to data for gender specific segments. So of course those schemes are there for affordability. We can keep talking about the content and services expansion, which needs to be in the localized language, which needs to be boosted there. However, one critical factor I think that does come up is in terms of just literacy and social empowerment. And that's where different telcos, operators, think tanks have their own programs. Many of them are CSR programs in terms of financial literacy and trying to empower women. But a joint collaborative approach between the government and the industry would definitely be helpful towards more gender-specific, women-specific interventions which can be encouraged. And we've spoken a lot about affordability. I think any form of government support to be able to buy the devices, which anyway are falling in terms of prices, would definitely bring in more women into the fold of being digitally connected. The numbers you were talking about are almost 200 to 300 million, which is really big. And just a last piece there, all of us over the past few months launched our only SMS and voice plans, which again, I personally think is probably not the best direction. We want to move in a direction of encouraging not just women, but men towards inclusion, towards more and more usage of data, right? That should be the direction. So let's not pull them back through any short term or short-minded regressive move.
Thank you, Ambika. I think that's very insightful and interesting. And with that, we'll move on to the closing remarks.
I will add something. Yeah, this problem of inclusion is actually globally. Worldwise, I have seen one GSMA report where 39% of the population, global population, they are living in covered area, but they are deprived. I mean, they are not using internet, mobile internet services. So this is one problem. Mainly, I feel it is due to the affordability, which Ambika has very well explained actually. In Geo, actually, just to solve this problem or to contribute to the better society, Geo Bharat 4G telephone has been launched actually, and some in vernacular language, some agriculture farming program and some content are also launched in that direction, so that at least more and more people are joining this program and they are included to these things. But government and telcos collaboration should be there. I feel so. Thank you.
So I think the call is clear. The telcos are telling us they are trying to do their bit, but the industry and ecosystem needs to come together. And with that, we'll move on to the closing remarks. So I'll come back to you again, Mr. Tiwari. Um, Maximum minute, just one wish list item that you would want in the policy and regulatory agenda that you believe will help create an investment friendly and sustainable environment for telcos.
One wish.
One wish list.
Okay, one wish. I was having so many wish actually, don't cut it short. I mean, because government is already one of the representative officer, senior officer sitting. See, what I feel that for the investment friendly and for the growth of the sector, regulatory predictability, regulatory certainty, and level playing field in one line. That is required much. Government is doing definitely in that direction. Apart from, there are some teething trouble, for the short term kind of thing, like electromagnetic field, ICNIRP alignment and all these things. Probably Rahul and Ambika will also add their wish list. Thank you from my end.
Thank you, sir. Ambika, if you can go next.
I totally agree with what Mr. Ashok said. I think if you want to look ahead, we want to resolve some open things from the past, right? So the MOS very nicely spoke about the various interventions that the government has done, and we are extremely grateful to the government for the partnership. I think resolving some other long-standing, be it financial or regulatory issues, would also be important for us to be able to move ahead.
Rahul, would you like to add something new to the wish list?
Yeah, I basically want to put it in two buckets. There is one thing about what we need to solve for now, and the other thing is how do we continue this very high capex cycle of investment. The Indian telcos, if I take, we have been investing something like $8 billion now continuously over a period of time. You need policies to sustain this sort of investment. So if I have to put the bucket of what we need to do right now, I think definitely look at how do we increase the pace of fiberization. This country needs fiber and it needs wireline. So there are recommendations from the government on wireline license fees front that has to be considered now. Already a lot of work is happening on reducing the OPEX in terms of green open access. We require more finalization of plans. ROW government has already taken lead, a lot of progress happening. So these three buckets as far as critical right now issues. For long-term sustainability, I agree with Ambika and Mr. Tiwari that we have to look at level playing field. Particularly now when we are seeing in spam, for example, there is absolutely no level playing field. Right? We are like subject to multiple regulations, multiple rules, multiple onboardings, multiple KYCs, where the same spam, all traffic is shifting on to the OTT platforms. I think that requires help. Second, we have to look at long-term sustainability of networks. Nearly 3/4 of the entire traffic which is being carried by telcos are actually being carried on OTT communication platforms. Right, 3/4 of that traffic. I think time has come for a government and regulator to consider a more viable model where there has to be some sort of contribution also coming in terms of fair share towards either rollouts or rural rollouts happening. So that is something on sustainability front very important. The government has to consider as a long-term play.
Thank you, Rahul. Vibha, as an OEM, what would be your wish list item?
Okay, I'll say apart from the harmonized, framework for the, regulations, I would say in telecom, India has done very well in terms of the manufacturing of the products within the country, and PLI is a very good example because PLI for telecom has been one of the biggest success for the government also. While we do manufacturing here and Nokia has been doing it since last 15 years, and we would want to do more of it, what definitely needs to fall in place is the ecosystem availability of all components and suppliers. There are a lot of government initiatives happening right now on the semicon side, and there are talks of other incentive schemes. But till the time that happens, I think there's a little bit of a recognition that these components are not here, and the policies around these things have to be aligned.
Thank you. I would like ET to excuse us for taking a minute or two extra, but now that you have a big wish list, sir, what are your top two expectations from the industry to help you create that sort of regulatory framework that align with their needs? And that would be my closing question for everyone.
So, uh, first, I'm happy to hear the wish list of the industry from operator side as well as vendor side. And I can assure you all who are present here that we are constantly working to fulfill this wish list in collaboration and coordination with all stakeholders. And everything of what they have said is on top, top priority for the government. We are here to establish the level playing field, regulatory certainty, fiberization. In fact, I invite the suggestions of the stakeholders also if you have any for increasing the fiberization in the country. Uh, as far as the government wish list is concerned, government always wish to grow delta extra than what we are doing today. And for that, whatever support from the government, from the department is required by the industry. That is from service providers as well as equipment suppliers, equipment manufacturers, including the design development of the ecosystem for components, etc. We have our doors open. Whatever suggestions or whatever proposals comes to us through these kind of discussions or through our one-to-one communications, we always take that very seriously. So I encourage everyone to please write to the government whatever your ideas are, whatever your wish list is, and that I can assure will be considered in a very right spirit. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And with that, sir has opened the floor for everyone to write their suggestions to the government. And I would like to thank all the panel members for their insightful views. I'm sure there was a Q&A time, but as I said, ET cut down us by 15 minutes. So you can connect with the speakers and have your questions with them. Thank you, everyone.